The Galactic Empire had ruled the stars for centuries, spreading its control over thousands of systems with iron fists and endless fleets. Its leaders believed they had seen every kind of species, every level of technology, and every possible threat the galaxy could offer. So when a scout vessel reported the existence of a new world called Earth, buried deep in a quiet corner of the galaxy, the Empire barely paid attention. At first, a few curious officers reviewed the transmission, an old blue planet with scattered cities and no known space colonies. Its people called themselves humans, and their technology looked outdated by galactic standards. There were no great fleets, no signs of advanced weapons, and certainly no record of them in any historical archives. By the time the information reached the Imperial Council, the entire event had turned into a joke. The council chamber, filled with powerful alien leaders from dozens of species, echoed with laughter as images of Earth were displayed before them. A senator from the Volterax system called it a farm world pretending to be a power. Another joked that they should send a single drone to collect Earth's surrender. The High Commander himself, a battle-hardened being with control over 1,000 warships, smirked and said, "If they resist, we'll give them a proper fireworks show." No one took the discovery seriously, and the mocking grew louder each day. They crafted a public broadcast meant to be both a warning and an insult. In the message, they demanded Earth's immediate surrender and offered what they called mercy through obedience. The transmission was sent through galactic channels and reached Earth in under 2 days. Billions across the Empire watched it like entertainment, amused by the idea that a small unknown species might try to act brave. The broadcast showed Earth's cities alongside images of powerful Imperial warships, drawing a clear message: resistance was useless. After that, the Council expected one of two things: a terrified reply or total silence. But Earth did something unexpected. It did not respond with fear or anger or even confusion. There was no official statement, no visible reaction. For a whole week, the humans remained quiet, as if they had not received the message at all. The Empire took this as a sign of surrender and celebrated early. Another senator laughed during a council session and said, perhaps they're still figuring out how to turn on their radios. But while the Empire laughed, in the darkness of space, something began to move. A single ship, launched quietly from the edge of Earth's solar system, entered hyperspace. It carried no fleet, no signal of distress, and no message of peace. It had no allies behind it, and no fear ahead of it. It was not meant to negotiate. It was not meant to talk. It was only meant to deliver one clear message, without words. And as it moved toward the heart of the Empire, unnoticed and undisturbed, the Council had no idea that the joke they made would soon become their most unforgettable nightmare far beyond the outermost defense lines of the Galactic Empire. Space rippled like water as a strange signal blinked briefly into existence, then vanished. At first, no one noticed. The patrol stations were used to space traffic, freighters, smugglers, diplomatic crafts. But this signal didn't fit any known pattern. A young technician monitoring a remote sensor array picked up the disturbance, but assumed it was a system glitch, so he cleared the alert and moved on. Meanwhile, deep in space, a lone warship emerged from hyperspace. It was dark, sleek, and silent, bearing no flag, no identification code, and no recognizable design. Its surface was coated in a material that absorbed all light, giving it the appearance of a shadow moving through the void. The ship was called Saul's Wrath, and it carried a silence that felt unnatural, as if space itself was afraid to speak near it. It did not send a message, did not request permission, and did not stop. It moved forward with the calm of something that knew exactly what it was doing. When the Empire's border patrols finally spotted the vessel, they didn't raise an alarm. They simply tagged it as an unauthorized civilian craft and dispatched 2 drones to intercept. Those drones vanished within minutes, with no distress calls, no explosions, just silence. Curious, A small patrol ship was sent next. Its final broadcast was a whisper. "We see it. It's..." Then nothing. The ship was gone. Suddenly, more outposts began reporting sensor failures and unexplained power surges. But by the time command realized something was wrong, Saul's wrath had already passed through 3 systems, leaving only confusion behind. When reports reached the Imperial Council, many assumed it was sabotage or a new enemy trying to cause panic. But one officer noticed the trajectory and paled, because the unknown vessel was moving in a straight line toward the Empire's most important stronghold, the Sarnax outpost, a space station the size of a moon, armed with the most powerful defense grid ever created by the Empire. It was a place no enemy had ever dared to approach. But Saul's wrath was not slowing down. As the vessel neared the outpost, the Empire finally responded with force. Dozens of warships formed a wall around the station, locking weapons and preparing for battle. Communications officers shouted into empty channels, demanding identification, warning the vessel to stand down, but there was no reply. Instead, the ship paused for the first time, and a quiet hum vibrated through space like a storm was forming in the distance. Without warning, a beam of energy, thin, focused, and terrifying, fired from the human warship. It did not explode on impact. It passed through 3 Imperial ships like they were made of mist, slicing through shields, armor, and hulls without resistance. A 4th ship turned to flee and was torn apart mid-maneuver. Panic spread instantly. Alarms screamed. The outpost's defense grid activated, sending a barrage of missiles, energy blasts, and plasma fire toward the lone attacker. For 10 full seconds, the sky around Saul's wrath burned with power, but when the smoke cleared, the ship was still there, untouched, unmoved, and eerily silent. Then it fired again. 1 shot, 1 clean strike. The core of the Sarnax outpost cracked open like glass under pressure, and in seconds, the entire station was consumed by light. It didn't explode. It was erased, vanishing into a blinding white sphere before collapsing into itself. Over 50,000 soldiers, engineers, and officers vanished in a blink. As the shockwave spread, the Imperial fleet fell into chaos. Some ships tried to fight, others tried to flee, and a few simply froze in place. The Empire, which had mocked Earth only days ago, now stood paralyzed by a warship they didn't understand. The vessel, still without a single spoken word, turned slowly and hovered in place as if waiting. The silence it carried was no longer strange. It was terrifying. No one dared to approach it. The Emperor himself was informed within the hour. Emergency meetings were called, fleets were redirected, and command centers scrambled to form a response. But none of their plans mattered now, because they all knew one thing. A single human warship had entered Imperial space without warning, passed through defenses like they were nothing, and destroyed one of the greatest military stations ever built, without taking a single hit. And worst of all, it was still there, watching, as if waiting to see what the Empire would do next. The entire galactic empire was in a state of confusion and fear after the destruction of the Sarnax outpost. But still, many in power believed the incident was isolated, a strange anomaly or perhaps a trick. They could not accept the idea that a single human ship had done what entire rebel fleets had failed to do in centuries. The Emperor, furious and humiliated, ordered the deployment of the Imperial Vanguard, an elite strike force consisting of 50 top-tier warships equipped with the latest weapons, artificial intelligence combat systems, and armored with layers of advanced shielding. These were not ordinary ships. They were feared throughout the galaxy and had crushed many rebellions with brutal efficiency. Their mission was simple: surround and destroy the human vessel at all costs. Within hours, the fleet arrived and formed a battle formation, surrounding Saul's wrath in a perfect sphere, ensuring it could not escape in any direction. Every ship locked onto the target, and once in position, the command was given. A storm of energy surged forward. Dozens of missiles, lasers, plasma torpedoes, and magnetic bursts filled the space around the human ship, lighting up the darkness like a second sun. For a few moments, it seemed impossible for anything to survive that kind of firepower. But when the energy cleared, Saul's wrath was still there, untouched. It hadn't even moved. The Imperial commanders stared in disbelief, unsure of what they were seeing. Then came the retaliation. The human ship responded with a pulse. Not a beam, not a missile, but a soundless wave of energy that burst outward in every direction. It moved like a ripple through space, invisible at first, then growing more intense with every passing second. When it reached the nearest Imperial ships, their systems collapsed. Shields failed, engines froze, targeting computers went dark, and weapons refused to fire. Within seconds, half the fleet was blind and powerless. Before they could react, the second wave came. This time, a coordinated strike, precise and surgical. The human warship fired beams that bent mid-flight, curving toward engines and power cores with mathematical perfection. One by one, the mighty Imperial ships exploded into silence, their pieces drifting into the void. Panic spread faster than the destruction. The remaining ships tried to flee, but even their warp drives began to malfunction. Some managed to jump away, only to reappear broken or trapped in unknown coordinates. The Empire had never seen such tactics, never faced a ship that ignored the rules of war. It was not just the firepower. It was the way Saul's wrath predicted every move before it happened, the way it never missed, and the terrifying truth that it had not taken even one hit. Inside the Imperial Command Center, the mood turned from anger to dread. Officers shouted at failing screens, tried to reestablish contact, but the fleet was gone, destroyed, scattered, or dead. Only the black shape of the human ship remained, silent and steady, floating through the ruins as if studying its work. That's when something even more terrifying happened. The ship opened a channel, not with words but with images, flashes of Earth's surface, cities lit under stars, humans walking peacefully through streets, children laughing, old people planting trees. It was not a message of war but of warning. A voice followed, translated automatically through galactic systems, calm and clear. This was the first strike. There will not be a second, unless you force us. Then the message ended, and the ship vanished, folding into space with no sound, leaving behind only wreckage and silence. Across the Empire, fear replaced arrogance. The message was received in every major system, broadcast not just to leaders but to citizens. The name Earth, once unknown and laughed at, was now spoken in whispers. And Saul's wrath, a name given to a ship that seemed like a ghost, became the most feared war machine in the galaxy, not because it had destroyed a fleet, but because it had shown restraint. The Empire had always ruled by fear, but now, for the first time, it understood what it meant to be afraid of something it did not control, something that had come not to conquer, but to warn. And that made it even more terrifying. The ruins of the once mighty Imperial vanguard drifted in space like shattered pride, silent proof of a power now questioned across the stars. Saul's wrath had disappeared without a trace, vanishing deeper into unknown sectors. But its silence was more terrifying than the destruction it had left behind. Across the galactic empire, panic turned into quiet horror. Billions had seen the broadcast, a peaceful image of Earth followed by a single line that echoed in every language known. This was the first strike. There will not be a second, unless you force us. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise spoken without anger or hate. It shook the Empire's foundation in a way no weapon ever had. The High Council gathered in emergency, and for the first time in centuries, the room was quiet. No laughter, no dismissive words about the primitive humans. Instead, nervous eyes scanned the stars as they reviewed the report. 50 ships, gone. The enemy, 1. And it hadn't even revealed its full strength. But now the bigger question troubled them. Why? Why would such a powerful force, capable of flattening entire fleets, send only one ship? Why show restraint? Why share a message of peace after proving dominance? To some, it was mercy. To others, a psychological game to break the Empire's confidence. But no one truly knew. Only one person dared speak. Commander Carrick, the only survivor of the destroyed fleet. He had been rescued from a damaged escape pod floating near the wreckage, and though physically unharmed, his mind was changed. He described the moment when Saul's wrath appeared among them like it was something alive, like the ship itself was watching and learning. It was like being seen by a god, he said, voice shaking. Not just targeted, understood. It knew us. It knew everything. When asked about the message, he only nodded. That message was not for our leaders. It was for our people. It wasn't trying to scare us. It was trying to wake us up. The council didn't want to believe him, but his words spread fast. All over the galaxy, people began questioning the truth. Who were the humans? How did a species so recently mocked for their backward technology produce a ship that defied physics, strategy, and logic? And what was the meaning behind that calm morning? Then, another twist arrived. A single small pod landed on the neutral moon of Xrn IV, where no Empire soldiers were stationed. It carried no weapons, no soldiers, just a black cube sealed with symbols unknown to any known species. Once scanned, the cube projected a full message, this time in words, spoken in the voice of a human diplomat. It explained Earth's position in the galaxy, their wish to remain distant from galactic politics, and the many warnings they had ignored. It explained that Earth had watched quietly while the Empire expanded through fear, enslaved weaker species, and silenced voices of peace. The message was not filled with hate but with sorrow. We asked for peace. You answered with insults. We offered understanding. You answered with threats. So we sent Saul's wrath, not to destroy, but to remind you that Earth is not what you think it is. The message ended with one final sentence that sent chills through everyone who heard it. We are not here to rule. We are here to stop you from thinking you already do. After that, the cube dissolved into dust, leaving no trace. The council could no longer hide the truth from the public. The citizens were no longer asking for war. They were begging for answers. Protests broke out. People demanded change, asking why the Empire had provoked a species capable of wiping out fleets without blinking. Across the stars, alliances began to shift. Old enemies of the Empire saw hope in the arrival of humanity. Neutral species, once too scared to speak, now whispered Earth's name with awe. The balance of power had tilted, and it hadn't taken an invasion or a war, just a single act of perfect precision followed by a message that touched deeper than any weapon. The Empire's leaders now stood at a crossroads. Strike again and risk complete annihilation. Stay silent and admit weakness. But the truth was clear. The message had been delivered, and no one in the galaxy would ever see humans the same way again. Somewhere far from the chaos, Saul's wrath remained hidden, watching, not preparing for another attack, but waiting to see if the galaxy understood what true strength looked like, not in violence, but in the power to show mercy when you didn't have to. The galaxy had known many kinds of fear before. Fear of war, of losing freedom, of watching planets burn. But after the message sent by Earth, something different settled deep in the hearts of billions. It wasn't the kind of fear that made people run or scream. It was the kind that made them stop and think, made leaders hesitate before speaking, and made powerful empires realize they had built their strength on arrogance and ignorance. The Empire, once the loudest voice in the stars, had gone silent. Every admiral, general, and political figure now carried an invisible weight. The knowledge that their ships, strategies, and weapons were nothing against a force they had never taken seriously. It wasn't just Earth's technology that frightened them. It was the calm behind it. The control, the silence that followed after Saul's wrath disappeared. No demands had been made, no territory claimed, no invasion started. And that was what terrified them the most. They had seen many conquerors, loud and full of pride, But Earth had shown power without need for attention. The Empire's citizens, once proud and sure of their leaders, now whispered about humanity in quiet tones. Stories of their strength spread like wildfire, some exaggerated, some terrifyingly true. People began to question everything they'd been taught. How could a species that had barely entered space a few centuries ago now be capable of making even the strongest fleets look weak? Where had humans really come from, and what else were they hiding? These questions created a fear deeper than death. The fear of not knowing. The fear of being watched by something you can't understand. The galaxy had faced monsters, but this was something new. This fear didn't come from brute force. It came from the unknown, from the realization that humans had shown only a glimpse of what they were capable of, and even that had broken the Empire's spirit. In secret meetings, old enemies of the Empire came together, not to plan attacks, but to prepare in case humanity decided to act again. Treaties were quietly signed. Defensive networks were built not near Earth, but far away, just in case Saul's wrath returned. Even neutral systems started sending messages to Earth, not to beg, but to offer peace. They didn't want to be seen as enemies, not anymore. Meanwhile, on Earth, everything remained calm. The people of Earth lived quietly, unaware of how their name had become a ghost in the minds of galactic powers. They didn't celebrate victory or declare themselves rulers of the stars. They simply watched and waited. They had sent one warship, delivered one message, and then disappeared. That silence became the loudest thing in the galaxy. Every day it continued. It made the fear grow. The Empire's leaders tried to regain control. They spoke of rebuilding, of strength, of pushing forward, but the words no longer inspired. The people had seen the truth. They had witnessed the destruction of a fleet by a ship that moved like it could see the future, by a crew that didn't speak threats, just truths. That wasn't war. It was a warning. And warnings like that don't come twice. The fear of death was simple. But this was the fear of being completely wrong about everything. The fear of discovering that the universe had never belonged to you, that you were never the strongest, and that somewhere out there, someone had just reminded you of that with absolute precision. It was a new kind of fear, one that didn't just shake the body, but the soul. The kind of fear that didn't fade with time, but grew stronger in silence. The kind of fear that reminded every species, every empire, that sometimes the quietest voice is the one you should have listened to all along.